the times they are a-changin'. Mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand, for the times they are a-changin'. The line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changin'.
Saturday night I got married, and me and my wife settled down. Now me and my wife are parting. I think I'll take a little stroll downtown.
Sometimes I live in the country, sometimes I live in town.
They built her back in 33 when the railroad man was king. Depression-bound folks came to town, forever wandering. There was depots by the dozen in the cities large and small, but God knows Union Terminal was the grandest of them all. Save the Union Terminal from the wrecking ball and chain. Life without them railroad blues would never be the same. Save the Union Terminal, save yourself a friend, so the mind's eye of your children can still see.
Wasn't that sweet? That was Save Union Terminal, a ballad written and recorded by our Jerry. And do you notice that was a very, very young Jerry? You know why? Because he hadn't gone through puberty. And I want to tell you, unless I'm mistaken, this thing went right to the top of the charts. Now, I'm almost sure it went right to the top of the charts with Peter, Paul, and...
No, 4.
Serious? Oh, it was number 4 on the charts.
No, it sold 4 copies, that's all.
It still helps save Union Terminal. I would like to welcome everyone here at Memorial Hall. We are the lucky ones. Tickets were fully requested only 2 hours after this went online. There were thousands on the wait list. We know we have a crowd at Fountain Square. Hello, Fountain Square. And on the Jumbotron there, and probably thousands of people streaming throughout the country. And this celebration, which I promise you Jerry would want this to be a light and fluffy one, is a celebration of the incomparable life of Gerald Norman Springer. In the next roughly hour and 17 minutes, we will attempt to cover the incredibly diverse and successful life that was well lived. I am Louis Beck, a longtime friend of Mickey and Jerry and the Springer family, and hopefully after this is over, I will still be their friend. When I was asked to MC today, I quickly responded, it's not a good idea. In fact, it's a terrible idea. I'm a banker, okay? Another one of those boring bankers with no filter, which is even worse, so God knows what's going to come out of my mouth. And I ask you this, how often have you heard the words banker and celebration in the same sentence? It doesn't happen. I said, why don't you get a professional? Ryan Seacrest isn't doing anything, or Maury. Or let's pull Oprah out of retirement. And then they said to me, how about, would you change your mind if free, completely free, we gave you one of these? Do you love it? Take care of yourself. Thank you. Well, I kind of got schnookered because now I realized that every one of you got a shirt, didn't you? So you got the shirts and I got schnookered. Well, I have some really, really good news for you. It's fascinating. It has come from high sources. I mean very high sources, reliable sources, that our Jerry, 6 weeks in the heavenly afterlife, he has the #1 rated afternoon talk show. Oh, wait a minute. You're not going to believe the format. You think crazy is crazy? This is really crazy. It's Democrats and Republicans talking civilly to each other and getting stuff done. Impossible. Well, we are all here today because in our own way, we feel like Jerry was our BFF. He knew us, we knew him. He was our dearest and closest friend. He understood us, he connected with us, and he respected us. Today, you're going to repeatedly hear words like clever, genuine, humble, really smart, creative, honest, passionate. He made us laugh until it hurt, and he made us think until we cared. Television and star quality never changed Jerry. It merely revealed the character deeply rooted in his DNA. Today you're going to have the chance to hear from people representing those diverse aspects of his life, and especially from his family and close friends. So let's begin our celebration with Rabbi Sanford Kopnick from Valley Temple, a longtime friend and spiritual leader.
Yeah, you should wait until I'm done. It's not going to go well, so it's okay. My wife Nancy and I met here in Cincinnati in the 80s when Jerry was on television and offering that remarkable final thought at the end of the news on Channel 5. And so when we moved to Chicago in the 90s, for one of my birthdays, Nancy said, let's get tickets to a television show. And so we tried to get tickets to Oprah, and she wasn't filming, so we went to the Jerry Springer show. And it hadn't changed formats yet, so nobody was throwing chairs or anything like that. So it was worthy of a rabbi, I guess, to go to that show. That said, when I got to Cincinnati about 20-some years ago, Jerry and Mickey weren't living in the city really anymore, and yet Jerry and Mickey maintained their congregation all the way through, and we could count on them to be present in our congregation, especially on the high holy days, unless Jerry was on Dancing with the Stars. And it's not, not clear how he did his dancing while fasting. And I'm here to tell you he had better have been fasting. It is my hope that you will rise if you're able, so that we can get a memorial prayer out there. This is probably the most serious thing that will happen this afternoon. So please rise. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bam Romim, O compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Gerald Norman Springer, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated. Jerry was a devoted Jew in his way. He was somebody who embraced many, many values and was all very human at the same time. There is a beautiful poem that was written by Alvin Fine that says, birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness, and we pray back to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, and from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. When we think about Jerry Springer and his remarkable life, we think about a man who knew exactly what blessings had been bestowed upon him. His near 50-year marriage to Mickey was one of those blessings he counted and counted and counted. His love of his daughter Katie and Adam and their son Richard, and all the extended family. These were the blessings he counted. When I had the pleasure of visiting Jerry for the last time, he knew that all of us were having a very hard time with this moment, but he knew that it was time, and he knew how to count his blessings. And he said, I can't think of a better life with better people. So Jerry knew. And Jerry knew how to help us by giving us remarkable memories. by making it so that we will remember, at least in our congregation, that when somebody was looking at a video of a great sermon I would have delivered, the comment on the Facebook page was, "Is that Jerry Springer behind you?" Or when I called him during the pandemic and said, "Jerry, we can't do our normal Purim spiel." Purim is this holiday where we kind of masquerade and make fun of a biblical book. It's all part of what we're supposed to do, believe me. And so, 10, 12 years ago from the set of the Jerry Springer Show, he filmed A Final Thought, which we played that year. And so for this year on Zoom, I said, Jerry, we do these parody songs. And before I could finish the sentence, he said, "Give me an Elvis song, and I'm singing it like Elvis," which he did, The Book of Esther by Elvis Presley, as played by Jerry Springer. Needless to say, we gained not a single new member because of that. Birth is a beginning, and death is destination, and life is a journey made stage by stage. For Jerry, it was on stage, made stage by stage, and at home, and at his synagogue, and in many, many other places where he graced our presence. May the memory of Gerald Norman Springer be for an eternal and abiding blessing. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Kopnick. Jerry really loved Rabbi Kopnick, evidenced by the fact he let him do his sermons on cue cards. That is his cue card. So now we have something really different for you. We have a proclamation from our vice mayor, our distinguished vice mayor, and it's a little different. It's going to be 2 minutes of chanting, "Jerry, Jerry, Jerry." That's. I have always wondered, help me with this, I've always wondered, if you watch the show, there were people up on stage, they didn't know him, and they're throwing chairs at each other, or worse, right? And what's the audience do? They chant, "Jerry, Jerry." What does Jerry have to do with it? He's down in the audience hiding behind Steve Wilkos. Steve, you're here, aren't you? Isn't that right? Yeah, there he is. He's hiding behind security. So what does, I'm sorry, I forgot to take my meds this morning. We really are honored to have the vice mayor with us today. She is a dynamic individual, and she's going to honor us, Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney, with a meaningful proclamation.
Thank you. Okay, if you really want to shout "Jerry, Jerry," let's just do it and get it out of our systems, okay? All right, everybody. Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Okay. Okay, we did it. It's done. So I'm really honored to be here. I first heard about Jerry Springer when my big sister Norma and her high school friends were campaigning for him for city council. I didn't know anything about this young attorney who was born in London, where his parents had fled during World War II to escape the Holocaust. In fact, both of his grandmothers and his uncle were killed in concentration camps. And that's something I didn't know about him until later. But I know that his family immigrated to the US when he was about 4 years old. They lived in New York, where he grew up. He ended up going to Tulane University and then Northwestern Law School. And then he worked on the campaign of Robert Kennedy. And when Robert Kennedy was assassinated, Jerry came to Cincinnati and worked for a law firm here at that time called Frost & Jacobs. And so that's when we got to know him here in Cincinnati. And here's something he said about his campaign, and I love this. So, he's in his 20s running for city council. He said, "My campaign is based upon the proposition that the answers to the problems which currently plague our cities, our towns, and our homes are not to be found in the decisions in Washington. They are instead to be found in the hearts, minds, and resources of our own people here at home." That means that it's all of us, everyday people, right here at home, who have the power to make the change that we need. And so these young people, and older people as well, embraced Jerry Springer, worked on his campaign. They believed in him. They believed he could win. And he did win. And that was a victory that we felt in our home with my sister and her friends, and I think the whole city felt it as he became the youngest person to ever serve on Cincinnati City Council. His victory was everyone's victory. It was their victory. And it just, thinking back to that really joyous time reminds me of a quote from Robert Kennedy. And Robert Kennedy said, "Few of us have the greatness to bend history, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events. It is the numberless, diverse acts of courage and belief that shape human history." And I love that. I think Jerry Springer is just an inspiration. And I am so honored to bring this proclamation from the city of Cincinnati. Now, as Lewis said, a lot of people did not get in to this memorial service today, but a lot of you are here. All of you, unfortunately, cannot come up to speak, although I know you'd like to, because everybody has something to say about Jerry Springer. So you know what? I'm going to let you help me with this proclamation. How's that? So everybody gets to speak. So when I point to you, you're going to do the whereas, okay? How about that? Is that good? All right. It's a compromise. You can't say a lot, but you can do the whereas with me. All right, let's do a quick practice. Whereas. There you go. Okay, and you have to be loud, okay? Just like you did with the Jerry, okay? So here we go. This is a proclamation from the city of Cincinnati. Let's get it out. Oh, it came out of the folder. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. Be it proclaimed. Oh, that was good. Jerry Springer was larger than life, and through his humor, compassion, generosity, and commitment to making the world a better place, he brought joy and acceptance to everyone he met. And Jerry may be known internationally as the host of The Jerry Springer Show. In his adopted home of Cincinnati, he is beloved for his intellect, insight, and ability to bring about positive change. And as a member of Cincinnati City Council and mayor in the 1970s, Jerry helped save Union Terminal, fought for justice for our most vulnerable citizens, and put Cincinnati on the political map. And Jerry was able to parlay his work in politics into writing and sharing thought-provoking insight on social and political issues through the Springer Memorandum commentaries on WEBN FM radio, making us laugh while also making us think, act, and debate. And how are you guys doing with those whereases? Okay, next time it's gonna have to be a little stronger, okay? But you're doing okay. Those commentaries resulted in a position with Cincinnati's NBC affiliate, WLWT, as a political commentator and news anchor, taking the station to first-place ratings because of his must-watch nightly commentaries that were discussed and debated by viewers from the backyard to the bedroom. And Jerry went on to international fame and fortune through his TV show, but never fully left Cincinnati, maintaining lifelong friendships and providing support to many local causes near and dear to his heart, even locating 2 radio shows and a podcast here. And, okay, this is your last one, okay? Really loud. Ooh, that was good. Jerry's signature sign-off, which started here in Cincinnati, encouraged us to take care of yourself and each other. We pledge to honor that sentiment by continuing Jerry's legacy of care here in the Queen City. Now, therefore, I, Vice Mayor Kearney, on behalf of our Mayor, Aftab Puraval, Mayor of the City of Cincinnati, do hereby proclaim today, June 9th, 2023, as Jerry Springer Day in Cincinnati.
Thank you for your leadership, sincerely, and you know I love your husband. You didn't know this was going to be audience participation, did you? Well, it is. You get your chance to pitch in at every turn. As soon as I find my place here, I will tell you exactly what we're doing. You know, here's what it is. Jerry never once in his career applied for or asked for a job. That's true. The uniqueness of his personality led him down a variety of paths. Our friends at Channel 5 have done a superb job of encapsulating the personality that was sort of a combination of the wit and self-deprecating humor of Woody Allen and the political savvy and inspiration of Robert Kennedy. Let's listen to that.
Before the world was introduced to Jerry Springer, he was ours.
This is really home.
It was Cincinnati where he made his mark as a political leader. It was Cincinnati where he became a familiar face on the television screen.
I learned that I had fallen in love with you, with Cincinnati.
And it was Cincinnati that had the most enduring hold on his heart.
It's in my blood. It really is. I'm not trying to be corny about it. I love this place. I love this station.
The rest of the world knew only the shock value of his show. Cincinnati knew the value of what he showed us before all of that.
With you who taught me more about life and caring and forgiving, and also, most importantly, giving something back than I'd ever learned through all the highfalutin formal education I'd previously received.
After a Northwestern law degree, Springer's political path coursed through the Queen City with youthful energy and a liberal bearing. He was a rising star when elected to City Council in 1971, brought down 3 years later by what seemed to be a career-ending political scandal, only to resurrect himself with complete candor, becoming mayor of the city in 1978.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the great comebacks, if not the greatest comeback in the history of Cincinnati politics.
His reach for the governor's office fell short in 1982. What Ohio missed out on would accrue to the benefit of Channel 5.
Some of the favorite years of my life have been, when I was here doing the news.
Despite the lack of a traditional broadcasting background, Springer flourished in his role as Channel 5 went from the basement to the top floor in the ratings race. What mostly set him apart was his nightly commentary.
In trying to prove something to you, I learned something about me. I learned that I had fallen in love with you, with Cincinnati.
Even those Cincinnati viewers who did not share his political opinions recognized his sincere manner and thought-provoking words and embraced those commentaries.
Which is part of the reason I have been, so sad this week. Why it's so hard to say goodbye.
Jerry Springer embraced the opportunity to deliver his nightly thoughts and for 10 years embraced Channel 5 in the same way he embraced this city.
I honestly loved the people here. It really was family. Those were my friends. You guys were my friends. And we did things together.
As the Springer family and so many of Jerry's friends and colleagues come together to celebrate and honor his 79 years of life, Channel 5's filled with pride to be able to call Jerry one of our own. He helped us mark our 75th year with a visit this past February. We are grateful for his work, his dedication to public service, his loyalty, his self-deprecating humor, his insights, and most of all, his friendship. We also are eternally thankful for the 7 words that now comprise his own epitaph.
Take care of yourself and each other.
We all know, yeah, that was wonderful. Channel 5 has done some wonderful stuff online with Jerry from the time that he passed to now. It's been wonderful what they've done. We all know that Jerry was a loyal Cincinnati sports fan, and I'm talking before FC Cincinnati and before Joe Burrow. But to understand the inner frustration of his unrelenting love for the New York Yankees, it's going to take a family member to bring us back to those initial days when they arrived on the shores at the Statue of Liberty and settled in New York. Gerald seriously quickly lost his British accent, but he never lost his love for the New York Yankees. Who could be better to tell us that story of the early years than his younger sister, Evelyn Strouch? Evelyn?
As we celebrate the life of my dear brother, 2 things come to mind. The first one is what he said in his final days. He said, "I've had a great life. I've done so many things that I wanted to do, and I'm extremely grateful." The second thing that comes to mind are the memories that we all have. For those of you who are in his political life, his entertainment life, his broadcasting life, there are many memories, and the rest of the program will attest to that. For us, it was the family life. We went on vacations together, had holidays together, Thanksgivings, and celebrated big occasions. And he was always the bright light. He was humorous, intelligent, compassionate, and humble. For me, the first memories come from our childhood. And the first one is seeing him in a baby carriage, tied to a lone tree on a hilltop on a farm in Oxford, England, where we had evacuated to, and it was next to an Italian prisoner of war camp. It was World War II. Our parents, as previous people have said, had escaped Nazi Germany about 6 weeks before the war started. And they were headed for the United States with their visas, but they could not go because the ships would no longer go. So England accepted them. And it was in London that my brother and I were born. For about a decade, our parents had wanted to still come to America. It was the land of opportunity, of freedom. They always said it was for us. And they were finally able to do so. It took about a decade, under the post-World War II Displaced Persons Act. And we came here on the Queen Mary on the ship, which is now a hotel in Long Beach, California, and came and arrived in New York, where we lived for 2 years in a displaced person hotel, and then moved to Kew Gardens in Queens, where we spent the rest of our childhood. The interesting thing is that Jerry really is Gerald in our family. And the reason is because the German bombers during the Blitz in London were called Jerrys, and we never wanted to call him that. But in America, it was okay. We did that. I often wonder, was there anything in our childhood that would predict what Jerry would become? Were there any incidences? And the one thing that comes to mind is he would stand on a table in the hallway in our home and start pontificating and giving speeches. And if we passed by, we would have to stop and listen, no matter what it was about. And I think that was a foreshadowing of what was to come. And the other thing is, we were in a terrific traffic jam, which is usual, going towards the beach on the Delaware shore where we live. and he was in the car with us, and we were there for like a 10-mile backup. So he gets out of the car with his guitar, sits on the roof of the car, and starts singing. And he sang the songs of the era, which were Joan Baez, Kingston Trio, and Peter, Paul, and Mary. And all of a sudden, everybody else would come out of their cars and listen. And so we had a concert for about an hour. And I would think that that really was his first audience that he ever had, and the rest is history. So, oh, wait a minute, I'm standing on it too. The other thing that really influenced Jerry, not just being himself, was really the fact that we had dinner conversations at our table every evening. And we would discuss politics, social events, or whatever. But the point was, and this is when we came to America, the point was to assimilate. So our father would always ask us, what did you learn of America today? And we would tell him. And our father also came home with an incident where he said he was in Brooklyn doing business. This was our father. And he noticed in the middle of the day that everybody was coming out of their houses and their offices into the street and started cheering. And he said, you know, in America, do you do this at lunchtime? What is going on? And we told him that the Brooklyn Dodgers had won the World Series. So with that, we also told our parents that baseball is a favorite pastime in the United States. And that, of course, living in Queens, it would not be for the Dodgers, but it would be for the Yankees. So our mother went out the next day and bought him a child's Yankee uniform, which he wore to school and was so proud of and wore it for weeks, and became a very avid Yankee fan. Although I must say he did have an affection for the Cincinnati Reds when he was here. Cincinnati became his hometown. After law school, his first job was here, and that's what brought him here. And then he entered politics, and you've heard from previous people, and you'll hear more about it. And when he started campaigning, my husband and I thought, you know, it would be a nice idea to help him. We live on the East Coast. So we flew out here and thought we would go campaigning. We said, what should we do? And he said, well, let's give out leaflets in the various corners of the city and then speak to the people going by and pushing for people to vote for him. So they dropped me off in a corner. I have no idea where it was. It was early morning. It was dark. It was bitterly cold. And I stood there for 2 hours giving out leaflets and telling people to vote for Jerry Springer. And my husband and he were going to go to other corners and do the same. So they picked me up, and I said, how did it go? And they said, well, it was really too cold. We went for coffee and stayed inside. That is the last time I campaigned for my brother. So what can I tell you? Okay, then from politics, he went to broadcasting. I know he was very successful here in Cincinnati, and then into entertainment. And then obviously to the iconic Jerry Springer show. Jerry and I would often say, you know, what would our parents have thought of it had they been alive? It had started shortly after they had passed away. And we said, well, if they're watching television, our mother most probably would have covered her eyes, but our father most likely would have said, make the television louder, and that would be it. But the thing about the Jerry Springer show, which was really showed what he was like, was his final statements, his final commentaries at the end, and certainly the take care of yourself and each other, which, by the way, Lester Holt now uses on his national nightly program, and thank goodness gave credit to Jerry on the day that he died when they gave a news report of it. He did say that Jerry was the first one to say it, which I was glad to hear. But it's really the final commentaries and this statement that really makes Jerry what he is and what he was. And so I think, as grateful as he was for the life that he led, I think we are as grateful that he was in our life as well. Thank you.
As Evelyn said, Jerry really was devoted to his family. as evidenced by his 50-year love affair with his wife and soulmate, Mickey Velton Springer, who was indeed his grounding compass in life. Every successful person in life needs a kind and caring partner telling them exactly what they're doing wrong. And between Mickey and Jerry's other great love of his life, his daughter Katie, Jerry listened, especially when Richard, the highlight of his grandson, chimed in. Jerry really listened. So I can't really imagine what it'd be like to be Jerry's daughter. So I think we ought to hear it right from her. And I will tell you this, the apple don't fall far from the tree.
Hi. So I wanted to share a few memories of me and my dad with you. As I'm looking over them, I'm realizing that 3 of the 4 are about food. Go figure. When I was little, Dad wanted to impart his love of baseball on me, so he would take me to Reds games. Now, due to my vision, he was concerned I really wouldn't get into it, so he decided the best way was for us to gorge ourselves. So pretty much every inning we had something. I'm talking hot dogs, nachos, cotton candy, ice cream, Cracker Jacks, the list goes on. Then as I got a little bit older, we decided to try roller skating. And I do mean try. The song Slip Sliding Away actually comes to mind. I also remember the DJ always saying, everyone can skate forward, backwards, or with a partner. I really never did figure out what the third option would be. I mean, the fourth option would be, you know, forward, backward, or with a partner. How else would you roller skate? But then over time, in junior high, we started going to father-daughter breakfasts on Fridays to Perkins, and we would just gorge ourselves. Blueberry pancakes, huge muffins, hot chocolate with whipped cream, some type of breakfast meat, and there's a debate about whether or not we also got chocolate pie. I mean, really, breakfast of champions. This, over the years, as I got older, turned into father-daughter dinners, and this was where I learned of my dad's deep love for whipped cream. We went to Cheesecake Factory. I asked for cheesecake with no whipped cream, and he said, oh, but I want the whipped cream. So they brought him a little cereal bowl of whipped cream, and yes, he ate all of it. So, you know, I mean, the truth is, no matter what, we were always friends. And because of my beliefs in reincarnation and soul packs, I know we're all going to see him again. Thank you.
Of all of Jerry's talents, politics was really at the heart of his being. He was solicited at Northwestern personally by Robert Kennedy to join his campaign. I believe that he saw in Jerry some of those same Kennedy-like leadership qualities. Kennedy's tragic assassination really deeply impacted Jerry. And then he made the decision to come back to Cincinnati and, as you heard, start a legal career. Fortunately, politics was still in his gut. Jerry deeply cared about those who really have no safety net in life, and he felt his mission was to create a level playing field. And when you think about it, every program Jerry was ever on, no matter how silly or what it was or what it contained, he managed to slip in some reaffirmation of those values. So let's watch a video containing some of the political voices of the past who remind us of the serious and yet lighthearted side of Jerry.
Politics was always his thing, and he left such an impression, but he never really left. His spirit was always in the city of Cincinnati. He was a political icon from my perspective.
I don't know how the Democratic Party would have survived in the 25 years that I was the chair of the party if it wasn't for Jerry.
I just think it was his deep personal desire to make people's lives better and also make the world a better place to live in. He came in with some very generous donations and helped keep the doors open during some tough times for Democrats in Ohio. You know, he not only did it for the state Democratic Party, but he visited every county in Ohio, no matter if it was a small county or a large county, and also gave his time and money.
He went to Ross County. He was in Athens a few times. He came to the small county that I'm in. There's like 32,000 in the entire county. So for Jerry to come here, it was monumental for the local party.
He was incredibly generous. And by calling him generous, I don't mean just in the way he donated money. That was superb. But he also donated time. The candidates who were successful in dealing with Jerry learned that if they invited him in, he'd be willing to go door to door for a period of time. He'd be willing to go meet with people. He'd be willing to show up as a featured speaker at events, and he'd write them a check.
I first met Jerry Springer when I was a little girl, running around City Hall. My father had worked for Ted Berry. Instead of taking me to the babysitter, I would have to hang out at City Hall after school. And I would tell my father, I said, well, everybody else is older, but I want to go hang out with Jerry Springer's office because they're really cool. And then you fast forward, I would end up running for city council. And so when I decided to run, he was one of the first people that I called up.
I always kept him updated on who the candidates were. And from my perspective, I'm always looking and recruiting younger candidates. And that was where Jerry was as well. Always looking at how we can locate, recruit young men and women who are running for public office.
Some funny tips that he had for me was a campaign tip he had given me one time. He says, you go to a bowling alley, you go to one bowling alley, and you call the other bowling alleys, and you ask them to have you come to the phone. So you're all over the intercom. And I said, Jerry, are you sure? And I called the others, and they summons me over the intercom. And people said, man, you were at my bowling alley.
Jerry Springer loved Cincinnati, and Cincinnati loved Jerry Springer.
Jerry was active and supportive of the effort to save the Union Terminal when there was a real threat that it was going to be destroyed. Jerry cut a record because Jerry always thought that he was a great singer. Whether he was or not remains a question, but he loved singing. He cut a record called Save the Union Terminal, and he practiced it for hours in an apartment that my wife and I lived in, and it just ticked off our landlord and almost got it evicted. But it got a lot of attention for the Save the Union Terminal effort, which is the way that Jerry helped get things done.
The one thing that a lot of people don't know is he was such a humanitarian. And he never turned anybody down. Anytime we were any place, there would people come up and ask him for money. And he carried cash and would just hand out cash for anybody that asked him. And I'm thinking, these people are taking advantage of you. But he didn't seem to mind.
He liked all people, no matter which universe they were coming from or what their particular culture was. He was a kind, gentle soul.
There'll never be another person like Jerry. He was that different and that strong in what he believed in and how he worked to get those things done. He was much appreciated because of that.
Jerry definitely had star quality. His diverse television career and many appearances, in addition to his regular shows, made him at one time one of the most recognizable TV personalities on the planet. Much of America got their first good, long look at the Jerry many of us have come to know and love, self-effacing and charming, with his shockingly long run on Dancing with the Stars. In fact, this is true. The last few weeks of the show, Jerry pleaded with the audience to vote him off and end his misery. You also know that Jerry felt the Springer Show was just silly. And of the thousands of episodes, he never admitted to watching an episode except when the fella married his horse. Pixel. Now, what comes to mind is, you probably don't know this, but Phil Farnsworth in 1920 invented that tube that we call the television. And I'm just wondering if he thought, I hope I live long enough to see on that screen somebody marry their horse. Well, you don't know the whole story. Okay, this is true. Of all the mistruths I've said, this is true. The horse and the fella got divorced. He caught her horsing around. Jerry often said, if I get into heaven, you are all a slam dunk. We would now like to share with you a video of some of the entertainment industry people with whom Jerry shared both his talents and his friendship.
I was doing Dancing with the Stars in Australia, then the producers asked me to come to America. And I thought, wow, I've made it. I've made the big time. I'm gonna end up dancing with some big Hollywood movie star like Brad Pitt or George Clooney. I turn up to the studio, the producers are there and they said, your celebrity's inside this room. This is the biggest star we have ever had on the show. And so in my head, I'm like, wow, it's George Clooney. And so I was very excited. I opened the door, I took one step in and I looked and I was kind of shocked because it wasn't George, but I knew who it was. And he looked at me and I will never forget these words. He looked at me and he said, I'm sorry. And I just thought, wow, I adore you already.
I'll never forget meeting him for the first time. He introduced himself as if I didn't know who Jerry Springer was. And he said, come on into my office. I sat down with my notebook and pen and he said, okay, 3 things. You work with me, not for me. If you ever need anything, work, personal, come to me. And how do you take your coffee? Because I stop at Starbucks every morning. And I was the assistant, and that's how I met Jerry Springer. And that was truly a perfect Jerry meeting.
When I worked on his show in Chicago, I mean, everybody loved the man. And it was just a fun time because the show was so much fun, and you know, it wasn't like work. Like, I couldn't wait to get there to do the show because it was so much fun. He was a super sharp guy, super funny, and I'm just trying to tell you, is like, whenever it was with Jerry, we were always laughing.
Jerry walked on the street by himself always. It's not like he had a posse, it was me and him. And people would walk up to him and, you know, sometimes they'd be like, hey, Maury, and he'd be like, hey. Like, he never shied away from a fan or taking the time to talk to people.
Another funny moment was Jerry Springer doing the samba. I even convinced him to get a spray tan. I don't know how that happened, but that was pretty hysterical. And of course I threw him maracas, and it was just so funny seeing Jerry Springer, you know, dancing around doing a samba, which he did very well, I have to say.
He always talked about his time on Dancing with the Stars and such fond memories working with Kim. You know, he told me, he was like, I really did it for my daughter Katie's wedding, you know, so the father-daughter dance, I wouldn't be stumbling out there. And then he said, her dress ended up being so big, I don't think anyone saw my feet.
I think my most special moment on Dancing with the Stars was the waltz that we did for Katie. It ended with Jerry going over to Katie, and there was not a dry eye in the house. It was really sweet, and that was a very special moment that I'll treasure forever.
He was very kind, very generous, very gentle. You know, I can't even put into words what he's done for me. Just changed my life for the better. I'm very fortunate to be where I am in my life, and you know, a lot of it has to do with Jerry.
He was intelligent. He made you feel special when he spoke to you. He was warm and kind, but most of all, he was a family man, and he loved his family so much.
Seeing them together, seeing the love he had for them was really beautiful, and I know they meant just the most to him, and I send all my love to them.
It has been said that the true judge of one's real being and character is what they do when absolutely no one's watching. You now will hear from friends of Jerry's who witnessed both his compassionate ways and expecting nothing in return. Some people call those acts of kindness holy moments. Let's watch.
I met Jerry more than 50 years ago. Tom Lucan had a party for him to introduce him to folks in Cincinnati. And it wasn't long after that party that I signed up to work on his first campaign. And we became really good friends, and we kept in touch. And then in the mid-'80s, I became involved in an organization called Tender Mercies. It's a special place that provides permanent housing for men and women who have been homeless and have a chronic mental illness. And I knew it would be a place that Jerry would love. He had a soft spot in his heart for helping those who couldn't help themselves. And then, as luck would have it, I ran into him at some event, and we were catching up, and I was going on and on about Tender Mercies, and then I said to him, you just need to come down. You need to meet our residents. You need to see what's going on. You need to see it for yourself. And he said, okay. But then he did. He did come down, and he brought Mickey with him, which was a real bonus. It took about all of 1 minute for our residents to find out that Jerry was visiting Tender Mercies. And you should have seen the line on 12th Street. They were lined up, and Jerry was so kind and patient. He spoke to each resident. He treated them with dignity and respect that they so deserved. And then from that point on, he was an advocate. And when we had our 20th anniversary gala, Jerry was the MC and the keynote speaker. And that's what he did. He always stayed in touch, and never, ever any strings attached, no hoopla, no fanfare, no press releases. Jerry just did it from the heart, and he did it because he had this need to give back.
The National Coalition for the Homeless is the oldest advocacy group that works on behalf of people experiencing homelessness. 90% of my staff, including me, have had the experience of homelessness. Jerry actually brought Louis Beck and other friends, including my old philosophy and government instructor, Gene Galvin. They came to DC and they did a fundraiser. And it was one of the best fundraisers that NCH has ever had. But I think my respect for Jerry went to a whole different level at that event. To me, he gave one of the most compelling speeches ever about people experiencing homelessness. You know, at that time, Jerry was really into the TV show, and you know, people only saw him through that lens. But that night, the speech was just so powerful that people were sitting in silence. You could hear a pin drop. It was such a moving experience. And it really helped us, it supported us, it kept us alive as an organization for a long time. He was someone who, despite his fame and exposure, was a normal guy who wanted to help other people be able to get through difficulties and disadvantages in their life.
My husband, Michael, and Jerry were political soulmates. And for every campaign that Jerry was in, Michael was his campaign manager and his chief financial advisor. Michael died in 2013, and Jerry stayed a presence in my life and in my son's life since then. And became involved in the W Connection. It's a widows organization, national nonprofit of widows, helping widows rebuild their lives, plain and simple. And I joined the board in 2019. And when I told Jerry that, he applauded me. And then honestly, without hardly an ask, he started donating. Regularly and incredibly quietly. And I was really grateful for that. I think it meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to my son. And I know that it was in honor of my husband.
For just about 50 years, there has been one character, and I do mean character, who has been by Jerry's side, his friend, his confidant, a partner, a sounding board. He has spurred Jerry on to do some incredibly creative things and helped in the quest to keep life wacky and interesting. Of course, I'm talking about Gene Galvin, who has been the driving force behind today's celebration and always knew what stirred Jerry's soul, whether it was music, politics, or genuinely the light, hilarious side of life. Gene was there. He was Jerry's dear friend, and I'm proud to call him mine as well. I give you Gene Galvin.
1969, I got a call from a friend of mine and said there is this effort to lower the voting age in Ohio. This was actually an effort to take it down to 19. I go to this meeting, and that's when I first met Jerry Springer. I saw in 1969, so that was what, 54 years ago about, a fully baked Jerry Springer. He arrived here with all of these skills that took him then through politics, journalism in Cincinnati, national TV success. It was amazing to see that formulated at the young age of whatever that was. He might have been 22, 23. Personally, Jerry and I had such compatible senses of humor, personalities, political drive. I had just gotten married. Then I met his girlfriend, who soon became his wife, and pretty rapid order, we became lifelong friends. One year of many, we did an annual thing of we would go to New York to celebrate Jerry's birthday. We two couples, Jerry and his wife, my wife and I, and they were on like the top floor of this beautiful hotel overlooks Central Park. And elevator stops maybe, we started on the 20th floor, it goes to maybe 18 and two people get on. And they look up and they see Jerry and they instantly recognize him, but it's, again, protocol on an elevator. They don't say anything. They turn around. So I could see him. And I said to Jerry, "Hey, Jerry, earlier I saw you talking to that elderly guy down in the lobby. What was that all about?" Jerry says, "Oh, yeah, he was telling me, I got this new hearing aid, best hearing aid money can buy." And I said, "What kind is it?" And he went, "Oh, yeah, it's 430. And I saw this couple uncontrollably just break up. And then they look at Jerry through the mirror and they go, "We thought that was you." We get to the next floor. They get off, two more people get on. He did that joke, I imagine 11 times before we got to the lobby. He was so adaptable, so off camera, just as goofy, stupid, funny as he was on camera. And a lot of people don't know this, but Jerry became a Harley rider for a couple summers. And we're riding, Spearfish Canyon, Keyhole, all these beautiful places out west. And one night we went to this famous bar in Sturgis, South Dakota, on kind of the outskirts of town. And it's just this little bar, but out the back they had acquired an enormous field. And we were there for about an hour, and the head security guy said to me, "Is there anything else Mr. Springer wants to do before he leaves?" And he was behind me shooting pictures. And I said, "He wants to ride the zip line." This is a total lie. So all of a sudden they're moving us through the crowd, and Jerry says to me, "What are we doing?" And I said, "Oh, it's gonna be great, you're gonna love it." And then we're going up this stairway, up this huge tower. Hey, where are we really going? I said, we're going to ride a zip line. He said, what's a zip line? And they rigged him up. They pushed him off. He's flying across. All these people down below are cheering, Jerry, Jerry. They're loving it. And I think it was like a bowling alley. He's knocking people over. And as we were coming down the stairway, I said, that was really fun, wasn't it? And he says, that was great. You want to do it again? He said, I never want to do that again in my life. The overarching thing of all of it was his heart. When Jerry and I started out, neither one of us were making any money. I spent my whole life as a lifelong urban public school, high school educator. That's the amount of money I made. Never poor. But Jerry then started out as a city council member, and he wasn't making any more money than I was. And then he started to really make some dough. But the thing about him is he always said to me, Gene, you are our true north. Don't ever stop what you're doing because you're the purest. So Gene, now that I've got this celebrity and this money, what you need, I will give you. And I'm telling you, he did it. I didn't go to the well a whole lot, but every time I needed his money or his time, he would take out a checkbook and write out the amount. If I needed him to come in and talk to my students, he would do anything I asked. And that is my lasting memory of Jerry, is this guy's heart. And he is irreplaceable, and I will never forget him. It's kind of funny, as I traveled around with Jerry to all these places where he would give political speeches, they'd introduce him, the crowd, applause would die down, and Jerry would always lean into the mic and say, "May you never be on my show." Music is the universal language. It can reach across borders. It often unites, but it always speaks to our hearts. And Jerry Springer knew that, even from the time after law school when he sang songs in a folk duo at Mahogany Hall, a small hillside bar. So today, we're going to ask music to lift Jerry out of this place and fly him away on its wings. You're going to hear 3 songs, each with a different theme that lived in Jerry's core. Love of this land, the long fight for justice, and peace on earth. To sing these songs are some of the men and women who performed on Jerry's 8-year-long podcast. Relax, enjoy, remember, and if you feel it, sing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jerry Springer's dear friend and his music coordinator, Mr. Casey Campbell.
All right, thank you, everyone. I just want to thank all of the longtime friends and family of Jerry for having me. Being the music producer on his podcast was one of the great joys that I've had in my professional career. So, Jerry, these are for you, buddy. As I went walking that ribbon of a highway, I saw above me that endless skyway, and down below me was a golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From the California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest
was passing, but on the other side, it wasn't written nothing. This land was made for you and me. Everybody sing along. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Radiating, go ahead. And I came shining, and I was strolling, the wheat fields waving, and dust clouds rolling. The fog was lifting, a voice was chanting. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Miss Alan Brown, sing us one. Alan Brown. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I saw my people. And as I stood there asking, is this land was made for you and me? This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. One more, Miss Ellie Faye.
Can never stop me or turn me back from the freedom highway. Nobody living can ever stop me. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Oh, now this land was made for you and me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this next speaker does not need an introduction, but we're going to give him a small one anyway. Will you please welcome a message from Mr. Paul Stuckey of Peter, Paul, and Mary?
These are the chords to Blowin' in the Wind, a song written by Bob Dylan, sung by Peter, myself, and Mary at the March on Washington in 1963, and what I've come to discover was one of Jerry Springer's favorite songs ever. You know, as public as our lives were in those times, I had never met Jerry until the early 2000s when he reached out to the Music to Life Foundation for songs to play on his radio show that were supportive of the standing rock protests against the Dakota Pipeline Project. And years later, we met in New York, where generous soul that he was. He gave Music to Life Foundation seed funding to identify and present 4 talented Cincinnati-based musical artists who were involved in addressing youth gun violence, suicide prevention, environmental justice, and civil rights. Jerry stayed in touch, continued to help brainstorm, and once again contributed funding to construct a music mentoring program to bring seasoned and aspiring social change musicians together for a public roundtable exchange of music and stories. He was feisty and funny. And as most of us saw repeatedly on his TV shows, he loved the honesty revealed by the confrontation of opposites, people, points of view, attitudes. And there's somebody I would have liked to have seen moderate Trump's recent town hall. His most recent dream was to find a way to commission next-gen artists to reimagine 60s classics and to keep the spirit of that music alive for future generations. The concept had a lot of potential as our next collaborative venture, but let's let him speak to that possibility.
This song is biblical in a sense. For the last 50 years in our country, we have had a cultural revolution. I would biasedly say that liberal causes in the end always win. Every decade for the past 50 years has been more liberal than the decade before it. It's a bumpy road. There are horrible things that happen along the way, but in the end, decency prevails and we become much more open, much more compassionate. And it started in the very beginning of the 1960s, frankly, with a president who looked as young as we did and who said there was nothing we couldn't get done. And whether it was the Peace Corps or landing a man on the moon or the civil rights movement and then the women's movement and the gay rights movement, and yes, today young people are becoming our conscience on issues such as guns. There are social causes to make this a better world, and every cause needs a language, and the language is inevitably music because it touches our hearts, our souls, and the song that got me, that just bolted through, was what Peter, Paul, and Mary did, Blowing in the Wind.
And how many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? You know, I'm thinking that these lyrics call for many voices to be singing. And in tribute to Jerry, I'm going to ask you and the folks who sang earlier to join me singing this song. I'll put the words across the bottom of the screen here, and I'll bring in some other visual reminders of a time when this song spoke to the hope in our hearts and the answers we all knew were blown in the wind. Sing with me. How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? Yes, and how many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? And how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned?
plow down by the riverside. You war no more, no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more, no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Damn it, sure, go on. I'm gonna meet my loving mother with down by the riverside. I say, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna meet my loving mother. Oh, down by the riverside. They ain't studying the war no more. Ain't gonna study 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 war no
I don't care how you slice it, that was wonderful, okay? That really was. My hat off. Thank you, Casey. Just real briefly, I want to thank there are many people that helped put this together. Casey Campbell, Megan Hills, David Bruce, Stephanie Cornett, Jude Samuel Beck, Bonnie Galvin, of course, Jean, Marcia Spaeth, Lucan, Kennedy Spaeth, Kelly Leon, and our good friend Stephen Leeper, who runs 3CDC, does a marvelous job with revitalizing our city, and Josh Steele and his crew that run this place that do, you have to work them to understand the kind of job that they accomplish. It is remarkable. And of course, our staff at TV5 that have been so helpful. Join us downstairs. We have refreshments, lots of refreshments, okay? So please join us for that afterward. And obviously, all of us are here because we know Jerry's loss is a huge loss. And I hope, my dear friend, that you have felt the love, not just here, but around the nation, and the lives that you have changed. We thank you forever, and we will miss you forever. Take care of yourselves, okay? Thank you.